Hello everyone and welcome to another Contention server beginner's guide, where today we're going to have a quick look at using the HARM missiles in the F-4 Phantom and the Mig-29. These planes normally don't get access to the AGM-88 missiles, but they have been lure hacked in, and so you can use them. It just requires a little bit of fiddling around to use, and so let's jump in and see how we do that. So first off, just briefly for those of you who are not aware, what are HARMs? They are a form of anti-radiation missile. Instead of looking for reflected radar signals, they instead just look towards the source of an active radar and head towards it. This means they are ideal for attacking enemy land-based radar systems such as long-range SAM or even radar AAA, because they will home in on that ground defence's actual radar signal, hitting the radar itself. So even on larger, they will take out the actual active radar, which will render the site inert. Really good for a standoff way to take out enemy air defences. So how do you get these weapons on the Mig-29 and the F-4 since they're not available in DCS by default? Well, the nice thing is the server devs have done all the legwork for you. When you load up any of the Mig-29 types, or if you load up an F-4, the default loadout will have the AGM-88 missiles equipped in all available slots. This is done through a little bit of lure hack trickery, and so you are not actually able to select these, meaning if you overwrite these options then you won't be able to put them back, but you can selectively overwrite only a few of these. For example, if you only want to say take 2 HARMs and instead you want to take the rest as air-to-air ordnance, that's absolutely fine. Just don't deselect the HARMs in the first place and then you're absolutely good to go. Now, when it comes to actually using these, we do need to use a little bit of trickery because the HARMs aren't really designed to work with these aircraft. They're designed to work with onboard computers on board the aircraft that let you, say, target things, target what you want to do, and let you know when you're in range. None of that is available for these 2 airframes because, as I said, they're just kind of wedged on with a lure hack. For the F-4, employment is basically identical to employing the Shrike missiles. You set your weapon selector to the ARM, the anti-radiation missile position. You select the stations you want to, select direct targeting, and then you let rip. Do note that unlike the Shrikes, you will not get any tone here. You've got no way of knowing that your missiles are tracking anything. On the Mig-29 it is a little bit more complicated because again you don't get any form of tone, just as with the F-4, but you can't launch weapons by default without a missile solution, so you do have to make sure you have bound the launch override button. But with that bound, all you need to do is select air to ground mode, select your weapons. You know that you've got the HARM selected, as a little 88 will appear on your HUD in the lower right hand side. And then you press launch override. At this point you should get LA displayed at the bottom of your HUD, or the equivalent in Cyrillic, and then you pull the trigger button and the missile is sent away. So that's how you technically get these weapons off your aircraft, but that's not really going to help you actually hit targets. The problem is, again, you've got no way of knowing if they are tracking anything or what they are tracking. You've really got to use as much information as you can to give yourself a best guess. Your best tool for this is your RWR system. This lets you know what you're being tracked by and, importantly, what you're being locked by. If in doubt, a good tactic is to head towards land-based radar signals and then wait for them to lock you. Ideally, wait for them to launch on you, and then point your nose directly at them and fire off your HARMs. If you are in range of the enemy SAM systems, they're probably in range of your HARM missiles, and so that's a good way of judging this, given that you're not going to have any distancing information on the RWR. Another useful trick is to use the map. Make sure you are well within enemy territory, and very notably you'll be able to see the state of enemy airbase air defences using the traffic light system, and if you pick an airbase with a green middle traffic light, that probably has some kind of air defence near it, some kind of radar based air defence, and so if you head towards that, put your nose on that, fire within range, you can probably get something in that hit. As for what the ideal range is, the maximum distance of the harm is quoted at 18 nautical miles, but that is going at max speed at 45,000 feet. You're unlikely to replicate that in the actual conditions, especially because, again, you don't know where you're launching from, you don't know what you're pointing at, and so probably better to cut it down to closer to 14 nautical miles. But again, closer is better with this, and ideally you want to keep the radar looking at you the entire time, so you do want to be within the detection range of the enemy radar, and maybe ideally be within its actual engagement range, skirt around that, play evasive with the missiles they send at you. That way you're giving your missiles the best chance to hit the enemy. And then lastly, you can absolutely use a wingman to help you out here. In the background video that I've been playing throughout this, what I've been doing is flying out with Goldwep. He is in an Su-25, and he's been using his RWR pod, which gives him ranging and direction information to essentially mark out the targets for me so I know where to head with this. Equally, using any other form of recon can be really, really useful here with planning your attacks ahead of time. And when it comes to using these, one important tip is to note that there are a lot of things on the Contention server that are capable of engaging large missiles like the HARMs. Both ground-based missile launchers and ground-based AAA will absolutely have a go at taking out these big missiles that you're yeeting towards them. And for that reason, you probably want to launch quite a few missiles at one time. Normally, one missile would absolutely hit its target. They are really quite reliable. The problem is that one missile will very easily be intercepted if you've got something lurking around like a Tunguska. So ideally, fire as many as you possibly can, especially if you're engaging a major SAM site. The intelligent CTLD players will probably put down quite a lot of defences there to defend their very expensive SAM. And then lastly, but very importantly, using HARMs in this setup has no IFF function. It simply locks onto whatever it decides is the most major radar source. Whether that be friend or enemy, it doesn't care at all. So do not fire these over friendly airfields. They will absolutely just loop straight down and smack into an airfield underneath them. Make sure you're closer to the enemy than you are to friends. If in doubt, make sure you've penetrated far into the enemy line, so whatever is nearby is definitely enemy. Not a great idea to use these right on the front line, because you never know, there may just have been a friendly that has just popped down a SAM position in a really nice location right up front, and you're just about to take it out with your HARM. Equally well worth noting is these will attempt to track air target radars as well. They're not very good at it because they can't maneuver very well, so they can't generally keep up with an aircraft, but they will do their best to, and this is especially true if someone is using ECM jamming. ECM jamming basically sending a mass of radar signals in every possible direction, and that is a lovely target for a HARM to head towards. As I said, mostly not going to be a problem, but definitely if you're flying in formation with someone who happens to have their jammer on, like is being shown here in the background, the HARM missile will absolutely do its very best to turn straight towards that wingman. So again, do be careful, and ideally make sure no one is jamming around you that you don't want a HARM flying towards at max speed. So yeah, that is this system in a nutshell. It is a really fun system. I love that it's an addition to the campaign. It gives some of these airframes just these additional options, particularly with the Mig-29. I really like that Flaming Cliff's 3 players have this option there. If you have any questions, do leave them down below, and otherwise I'll catch you in a future video. Until then, remember to be kind to yourselves and everyone else. Cheers.